Now, Christianity has its 13th apostle, a faithful witness to the love, mercy, and truth of Jesus Christ. How about you? Will you be the 13th apostle?
Father Augustine was worried about God's judgment and prayed, saying, "Lord, why is life so unfair? Some die young and others old. Some are poor and others rich. But most importantly, why are evil people so well off while good people wind up oppressed by poverty?" A voice came to him saying, "Anthony, God knows what he is doing. Mind your own business." Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of the 13th Apostle, where we explore the good, the beautiful, and the true, and some of the lighthearted message of the Catholic faith and the Catholic tradition. This is Tom Caffrey with my co-host Dan Duddy. How you, Danny?
Hey, Tommy. How you doing, brother?
All right. You're out on the left coast, right, today?
I am. I couldn't be any further west. I am out here.
Otherwise, we'd hear the bubble sounds, right, if you went any further west?
Yeah, plus I'm not much of a swimmer, so you'd hear gurgling.
Oh, beautiful.
Yeah.
All right.
That's nice.
All right. We're in for a stretch of great weather here in the Garden State. The next 6 days, I think, are going to be...
Oh, is that right?
Oh,
good.
Beautiful. In fact, I think this is the best weather in the United States this coming week in New Jersey. Okay.
And I'm not there. You're rubbing it in now.
Well, I'm rubbing it in, and I'm also making a comment about our guest. So, ladies and gentlemen, we are privileged to have as our guest Fr Augustine Wetta, and we are going to talk about his book, Pray, Think, Act, and the subtitle, Make Better Decisions with the Desert Fathers. Welcome to the 13th Apostle, Fr Augustine.
Thanks. Well, if you're, I don't know about good, beautiful, and true, but I've got sinful, dirty, and prevarication cornered over here in St. Louis, Missouri. In New Jersey, of course, it's all about the good, the beautiful, and the true.
Amen.
And then, of course, there's Boston, which is about the absolutely despicable.
Did you know? I knew we had...
Yankees, it's got to be Yankees fans, Tom.
Okay.
Father's got to be Yankees fans.
Father Augustine, we'll give you that stipend off the air, okay?
Yeah. I was coached ahead of time.
Don't sell us out now, Padre.
Stay steady. Oh, my goodness. So, there are heavy lifting tomes out there about theology and philosophy and whatnot. Father Augustine, you have found a way to put some heaviness, but you've leavened it with some humor, some irony, between the eyes comments, going way back from St. Anthony of the Desert, the number one guy.
That's right.
Guy I took to pretty well when I learned a lot about him in school. And what I want to know, one of the things I want to know is, and I'm not going to assume that our audience knows this very well, if at all, but I'd like to know whether in your monastic training, whether you had as many wild images, imaginations, experiences as our great monk, St. Anthony, because he had some doozies.
Yeah, well, it's, times don't change. I won't say that I was ever heard fighting Satan directly fist to fist in my cell, but I certainly had some wild imaginations and adventures in the monastery. Well, in fact, one of the stories that didn't make it, well, actually not, well, okay, it didn't make it into this book. It made it into my previous book about humility. I'm an authority on humility, by the way, in case you couldn't tell just talking to me. I was reading about the Desert Fathers, and apparently St. Francis wasn't the first to roll around in a rose bush when he encountered lustful thoughts. And so, inspired by my forefathers, I decided that the cure for my own lustful thoughts was to jump in a rose bush. And lucky for me, our brother Simeon had a whole rose garden behind the monastery. So I jumped in and rolled around, and I wanted to take that story out of the book, actually, but then Ignatius told me it was their favorite story, so I had to leave it in. But yeah, life in the monastery is just as crazy, probably more crazy than it was in the 3rd century A.D.
Oh, my gosh.
We're just less holy, that's all.
Rolling around the rose bush is a different... it's a variation on the theme of the cold shower. So...
yeah, I recommend, I don't really recommend a cold shower either, but I definitely don't recommend rolling around in the rose bush. For one thing, you have to be naked when you do it, which I was not.
Take a shower or go in the rose bush?
Either, really. To be honest, you end up with a big mess if you try to do either of them clothes. It's just so you can get out of the shower when you're done. You can't get out of the rose bush when you're done.
Oh my gosh.
Which is why the fathers took off all their clothes before they jumped in. They also jumped into wild rose bushes, which have considerably smaller thorns. So just all around, it was a bad idea, bad experience, and it was actually a really good experience for the rest of the monastery. They had a good laugh, and it became it became one of our own. I'm thinking of writing a book on the story of the urban fathers, the stories of the urban fathers, which is just things that happen in the modern monastery that are just absurd or silly, but that we somehow managed to learn from one way or another.
Wow. Well,
Father, before we got on the air, you talked about surfing, and there's a flavor in your book of athletics. And I'm a football coach.
Oh, yeah, there is.
I think so, yeah. And I think
they called themselves the Athletic Day, right?
Yeah. And which was pretty cool. I'm a football coach for 40 years, high school football coach until recently I retired. Yeah. So. And yeah, you made a comment. I think you just repeated it, right? About your buddy Flex, the offensive lineman. Yeah, right, right. The old line. Yeah, and you come right to a comment that don't let the technique get in the way of actually listening, because I think Flex kind of taught you a lesson in there about the retreat having come from Jesus Christ Himself.
Right? Yeah. Which actually kind of repeated itself today. Hold on, I've got to switch on to my phone just told me it's running out of juice. Hold on. Can you still hear me?
Yes.
Okay, good. Well, then I'm plugged into the wall now.
Right.
Yeah, I teach a class on theology of the body to high school juniors, God help me. And but one of the things, every year we start off a little further behind, because I realized that not only did they not understand what the body meant, they didn't understand what truth was. And kids have been raised now to believe that there's my truth and your truth, and that there's really no truth. And so I got to talking to kids about sports, and how I'm not a big fan of baseball because I don't understand it, and I never really. I went to a game when I was 9 years old, and I stood up. It was the Astros back in Houston, Texas. I stood up and I said, "Only 3 more points, guys." Crowd then. All 30,000 fans, and it was 3 more points here, so I never went to another baseball game.
You're traumatized.
But there are objectively better baseball players and objectively worse baseball players. I just can't tell the difference. And so today, one of my students got up and gave a little presentation on baseball and said, for example, that apparently at the professional level, the time it takes the ball to leave the pitcher's fingers to the bat is 1/4 of the blink of an eye. And so you can't think when you're at bat. You just have to go with it, right? So I think I've got a new story of the urban fathers, although maybe it's from one of the urban sons this time. But he gave this brilliant little presentation on the truth and beauty of baseball as an objective good in the world, a force for good.
Oh, cool.
Which, yeah, I had posted a little bit of his lecture on my Twitter account. I've jettisoned all of my social media. I started off when Ignatius first published my first book. They were like, "Well, you got to have all these social media things," and so I got all these accounts, Facebook and my face and your face and this and that. And it just took up so much time, and nobody really wants to know that much about me. So it ended up, I just have a Twitter account now, but I'm always looking for things to put on there. So I videotaped him talking about the truth and beauty of baseball. And I really learned a lot today. I'm still kind of reeling from it.
Well,
but that's another thing about the Desert Fathers, to bring it back to the subject at hand, is that they were not afraid to dumb it down, and also not afraid to listen to people who weren't necessarily experts.
Well,
that's the wisdom of the desert, I think, that I hear about in your book. Yeah, and your book is a great reflection of that. Mm-hmm.
Thanks. There's actually a Desert Father story about, I think it's Abba Paphnutius, who used to be a court scholar, and he was observed by one of his monks sitting on a stone listening to a farmer. And he said, "Well, why'd you do that? You know how to read. He doesn't even know ABCs." And he turns to his novice and he says, "It's true. He does not know his ABCs, but he knows a lot more than me about farming."
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah,
yes.
That's the wisdom. That's the wisdom.
So, I just want to, I'm going to ask you, because in your book and I like the fact that you put fathers and then a hyphen and mothers. We can't talk about the Desert Fathers and mothers without talking about Saint Mary of Egypt.
Oh, yeah.
But it's very interesting, Father Augustine, that you probably don't know what a bramble bush that you stumbled into a moment ago. When in about the same breath, you talked about the game of baseball and theology of the body. Now, I don't know if Dan's picked up on where I'm going with this, but I'm not going to go all the way.
Go all the way. Theology of the body, right?
This is going to be... I'd love to hear it. You ask your students about the game of baseball, if there are any baseball players, and how that relates to the theology of the body, about what it's like to get to first base, to second base, to third base.
It's true. The kids always, inevitably, the class ends, or some class ends with the kids saying, "Well, how far can I go before it's a sin?" Like, that's all I really want to know.
Yeah.
And I always say, well, no one would say, like, how slow can I run the bases and still finish? Still play the game. Like, it's absurd. You want to, St. Benedict, who was not a Desert Father, but knew them well, and he said that you should love chastity. And you can't love something that's always the minimum. You want to try to be a great athlete, right? An athlete of chastity, believe it or not, and of humility and of piety. It's really fun. I love, part of what I love so much about the Desert Fathers is the simplicity of their approach. Like, they would go out in the desert and see who could fast the longest, or they'd even go out in groups and insult each other to see who's the most humble. Like,
yes.
Who could take it, like the relentless abuse the longest. And I love that. I think as Christians we need to, and as Christian men in particular, I think we need to recover a bit of that. Like, you think you can fast? Yeah, watch this. Yeah, you think you can take a cold shower? Yeah, well, I'm going to do it for 90 days,
Oh.
Speaking of which, I tried to do this Exodus 19 or whatever it was, and I lasted about a day and a half.
Well, it's that cold shower.
Yeah, I know. That was what did it for me.
Yeah, that's a game stopper right there. That's not even a game changer. I'm out on a cold shower.
Well, did you say you made it to day 19 of Exodus 90?
I made it to day number 1.5.
Okay. Well,
I was about as successful with that as I was in my basketball career, which that's extremely short-lived.
Well, I want to bring our attention to your page 33 of your book. It's about humility, and that's really what we're talking about. What you're talking about, and I'm thinking, there's a difference between, well, it's which comes first. So if you give the right, with your steps that you outline in the book, the pray, think, and act. If you do that, if you give good thought to it, you pray, you meditate on it, and about a decision you're going to make, that's different than something that's spontaneous. But being humble, so that's an act of the will, as opposed to you suffering the consequences of humiliation because, so the event, the action, the sin, let's call it what it is. The sin is going to exact will humiliate us, as opposed to us making an act of will prior to that to being humble.
That's right. Yeah. Well, it's funny, like, as I've written these books and really sort of, well, I guess, advanced, as it were, in the monastic life, I'm beginning to figure out that pretty much everything is an act of the will. Like, I rarely, like, feel in love with Jesus, but I will that I love him, and the kids are always deeply scandalized when I tell them, look, I'm an atheist about 70% of the time. I sit around when I pray and think, man, have I not just talked myself into this? But faith is, again, I think it's an act of the will. You just say, look, this is what I do. This is what I am. And I may not, that my faith comes and goes, my emotions come and go, but my will is focused on Jesus. Like, that's what I want. And I think I'm not married myself, but I've heard a lot of confessions, and I'm pretty sure that basically being married boils down to just saying, you know what, I'm in, and that's that. Like, And I kind of surprised myself the other day. I said a wedding for one of our alumni. And I don't do many weddings because I insist that the couples not sleep together or live together or any of that stuff before they get married, and I never hear from them again. But this couple was just very pious and wonderful, and it wasn't in my sermon, but I kind of went off track, and I said, look, here's the thing. Someday, one of you is going to turn around, look at the other one, and think, my God, what have I done with my life? And that's why you take the vows. Because if everybody just wanted to be together their whole life, there'd be no point in taking vows. But you're going to disappoint each other and upset each other, and probably one of you is going to want to leave eventually. But that's when you say to yourself, nope, took the vow, I'm in. And, of course, that's when you show that you really do love them, when it's not full of candy canes and unicorns and sweet tarts, but, that hard-earned, grunting labor of love,
Mm-hmm. One of my favorite things that I read here in your book, I'm a fan, becoming a fan. The more I get to know St. Francis de Sales, the more of a fan I become his. And he's got that simplicity that you're referring to, that straight to the point, cut to the chase, right to the heart. And the other concept that you put in the book here on page 41 is that, he says, we learn to study by studying, to play on the lute by playing, to dance by dancing, to swim by swimming. So also we learn to love God and our neighbor simply by loving them. Yeah, and those who attempt any other method are mistaken.
Right? Yeah, he's great. Another quote, which a misquote of Francis de Sales that I was taught during my novitiate was, when you go to serve the poor, expect them to demand an apology. Which I am reminded of like every day that I teach, because the key, you spend all weekend making a lesson plan, and then they want to watch a movie, and it's like, no, you're not paying for that. But yeah, isn't he great? I mean, all those great saints were surprisingly frank. I've got a great friend named Dawn Eaton who writes books about chastity, of all things. And she's one of these sort of kind of slightly crazy people that I call holy bulldozers. They just, when they've decided to do something, you either get on board or get the heck out of their way, because, like, But I think Mother Teresa was like that. You either, when she knew what she wanted, there was no prevarication, no sideways talking. These people just get to the point. Like, you want to be holy? Be holy. You want to learn how to study? Study.
Yeah.
And it really is sometimes as simple as that. In fact, most of the time, I think it's as simple as that, which is why I love the Desert Fathers so much.
It's Aristotle's virtue.
Yeah.
Aristotle's virtue.
Yeah.
Do the thing. Just keep doing it. Now, it's interesting. You used the phrase, when you said will to faith, essentially, the first thing that came to my mind was and this ties in with humility as well, or my lack of humility. During pre-Cana, I like many men didn't want to go to pre-Cana. What could the church teach me about love? I love my fiance and blah, 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 blah. And, but I learned one of the greatest lessons of my life in pre-Cana, and that was the decision to love. And, the ballast of, and I've used that not just with my marriage. I've used it elsewhere. When to make a decision, it's an act of that will. All right, you're not going to move me off that mark. I've just made this. It's embedded in concrete. This, rebars going through it. That will. The difficulty is when that other part of the brain, that limbic system, that that seed of emotion in us, when sometimes we get swamped by that. And that's why people like, saints like St. Mary of Egypt. And ladies and gentlemen, if you don't know St. Mary of Egypt, look her up, read about her.
Yeah. She's a great one.
Wow. I mean, what we would say is a dissolute life, but hope springs eternal. Man, hope springs eternal. And she is a great lesson of that. And the other thing I'll say is on the, we sin, we confess, we repent, we do our penance, and we sin again. We keep doing it. I'm looking at another page in your book, and, we make the same bad choices over and over, you're right. And it makes me think of the Psalms of Lament. And one of the reasons I love them is because the very fact that there is a Psalm of Lament, that psalm, whichever one we pick, exists, is because the person, the psalmist, the poet, didn't break the covenant, didn't break the relationship, wants it, and still believes that God is there, even though he may or not feel it, experience it. So
right. And you never know. I mean, as one of the Desert Fathers said, you never know, you might get lucky and die. So before you sit in the next time. And there's people are always saying, I don't go to confession because I just do the same stuff over and over again. It doesn't make any difference. Well, maybe not, but who knows? You might get lucky, or you might not get lucky. And in either case, you get lucky, right?
That's true. Yeah.
But there's no discounting the possibility of a miracle. And then there's this wonderful story from the Desert Fathers about the monk with the 3 oil bottles who the novice comes to him and says, look, I'm not coming back because I keep doing the same old evil stuff. He says, okay, but before you go, could you wash out one of my oil bottles? He goes, fine, whatever. He washes it out. He says, I changed my mind. Could you put oil back in? And he does. The old monk goes back and forth like 3 or 4 times, can't decide whether he wants the oil. Finally, he says to the novice, now look at these 2 jars. Which one's cleaner, right? And even though you keep dirtying it up, cleaning it does have an effect over time, right?
Yeah.
I remember telling my mom when I was little that I shouldn't have to brush my teeth because I'm just going to get food all over them anyway.
Exactly. Why make the bed? You're going to sleep in it?
Yeah.
Right? All that stuff.
Sleep in it anyway. That's right. Yeah, I should have used that in my book.
We are just about out of time. But
no.
Yes, I know. I can't believe it. And what I'm gonna tease the audience and say, listen, you get this book. You got to get this book, ladies and gentlemen. Pray, Think, Act, by Father J. Augustine Wetta, Wetta, and pay close attention to pages 85, really the conclusion. You talk about miracles and humility, transformation with the story of Brother Edward, I almost dropped a tear when I got to that, Father Augustine. So,
not in New Jersey.
Don't tell anybody. Don't tell anybody.
We try. We don't.
Forget about
it. They do in Boston. Yeah. Yeah.
Great.
Well, the Bostonians are always crying because they're not in New Jersey.
That's right.
All right. You just doubled your stipend. So, Father Augustine, a real pleasure.
Thank you, Father.
Yeah, wonderful.
Oh, yeah.
And
anytime.
we want to ask you to celebrate a wedding for us, but would you say a blessing for us and our audience?
Sure. I'll even do an old school. Well, actually, okay, I'll do two things. I want to tell you a prayer that one of my students invented the other day, and then I'll give you the blessing. And he said, Lord, make us holy and smart, but mostly make us holy, because who cares if you're smart if you're a jerk? So,
Amen.
Benedicat, now I've forgotten my Latin blessing. Benedicat vos omnipotens Deus Pater Filius Spiritus Sanctus. You now have your cyber blessing.
Amen. Wow, that's wonderful.
Thank you, Father.
Thank you, Father Augustine. Real pleasure. I look forward to another conversation with you.
Yeah, let's have
Anytime.
another conversation. Let's get into this
I feel
book
like
a little
I'm
more.
getting back to my roots.
Beautiful.
Yeah, man. It's great.
God bless you, Father.
God bless
Bless you, Father. Yeah.
All right, Danny, what's coming up next?
All right, stay tuned, folks, for the Angelus and your prayer intentions with Peter and Jenny.
WQPHradio.org. Get great conversations like this with Father Augustine Wetta. I want to thank Ignatius Press for giving us the copies to the book and just arranging for this great conversation. So thanks to Kevin Wanja, Andrea Boring, Susan Nutt, and all the people at Ignatius Press. Thanks again. Thanks to Mary Ann, Jean, James, and the rest of the crew at the station. God bless all.
God bless you.
Thank you for listening to The 13th Apostle with Dan Duddy and Tom Caffrey. For more information on Dan, visit his website at www.danduddy.com or email dcduddy@gmail.com. Tom's website is faithpilgrims.com or email trcaffrey@faithpilgrims.com. How about you? Will you be the 13th Apostle?